CIA's primary things is disinformation. So it's quite possible that this is just a way of trying to paint China into a corner at a difficult time for the Trump administration. I mean, given that this is supposed to have happened between 2010 and 2012, one wonders about why it's coming to the forefront at this point.
Well, Qinduo, what was your first impression upon reading this article?
Well, I agree. I tend to agree with Einar Tangen. The timing of this report, together with the other reports like the two Chinese fighter jets intercepting the U.S. Air Force plane, in recent reports like these, if not, bring out direct damage to the bilateral relationship, it will create this hostility or animosity between the two countries for long term. So yes, I mean, it's about the CIA, so you probably can never believe wholeheartedly.
Well, upon reading this article, what does it strike you about the scale of the US's espionage activities in China, Einar? I mean, we've heard so much about what the CIA or what the National Security Agency do in other countries. After a while, you become used to the idea that this is, normal that they conduct these activities.
Well, it's not just the CIA. I mean, everybody is spying on everybody else. This is not a new subject. And quite frankly, if you look at just in Europe recently, you have different countries who are allied in the same economic pact who apparently decided they were going to eavesdrop on each other. I think the important thing is that it's not necessarily about military these days. It seems to be more and more about corporate espionage and getting a leg up on the competition in terms of where countries are on their negotiations. And I think this is a radical change, and it's quite different. Now, in terms of tradecraft, China does have quite a few more years, if not necessarily the technological edge that the U.S. has. So it's quite interesting if you start looking at the number of cases involving accused Chinese nationals or people who are accused of spying for China. About 5 of those cases out of the 15 and most recent ones, were actually dismissed.
Yeah, Qinduo. Now, while reading this article, what does it tell you about the kind of scale and the potential damage US's espionage activity could inflict on China's national security?
Well, if you look at the revelations by the Edward Snowden case, like a Chinese university in Hong Kong and Tsinghua University, the headquarters for Chinese technology company Huawei, the headquarters in Shenzhen, was attacked obviously by National Security Agency or CIA operatives. So in terms of the digital infrastructure, obviously China is a latecomer. China's infrastructure is weak in this sector. So it's vulnerable, let's say, in terms of national security. And so most of the time, I would say China is on maybe defensive in terms of protecting its national security here, either digital or the traditional sense.
One thing that struck me about this article is the kind of details that it has included, including, for instance, according to 3 of the anonymous sources that talked to the journalist, that one U.S. Operative was shot in front of his colleagues in the courtyard of a government building, a message to others who might have been working for the CIA. Qinduo, what was your impression upon reading this kind of graphic details?
You know what? This whole article, I would give it some credibility, but because of this sentence, I would have a lot of doubt about the truthfulness of the story.
Why?
According to my understanding, for the Chinese side, it's rare, it's almost impossible for the Chinese security people to shoot somebody in front of the colleagues especially in the government building. That's almost impossible. That's not the Chinese way of doing things, let's say.
Well, I'm going to pick up on that and say that it's almost impossible from a purely mechanical point of view. And what I mean by that is that you would never take down and shoot somebody who has actionable intelligence. If this in fact is an agent, you would be debriefing them and trying to either turn them into a double agent or trying to get every ounce of information you possibly can from them. The idea that you would just go out in public and shoot them like a dog is something out of the movies, not out of reality or the way that tradecraft is practiced, even in today's climate.
Another thing is, I understand that the author is dealing with people who are dealing with in sensitive positions, so they have to remain anonymous. But no names have been given of the sources. There is simply impossible to identify or to verify this kind of information. And then you have 10 of these sources, and then it's all from one side. So how can 1 and 1 be added up and equal 2 here, Einar?
Well, it's, as I started off saying, disinformation is one of the part of the tradecraft of any intelligence agency. You're trying to convince people of things that aren't there. Obviously, if it were true, there would be unnamed sources. If it's not true, unnamed sources. So in that particular regard, it is. But it's when we start talking about the details of this, the fact that there were so many of them, that it was so long ago, that they claimed that there was a public shooting, this is where things start to fall apart. It just does not make sense for the Chinese Secret Service, to be taking down somebody who could provide them with additional information.
Qinduo, however, China has been spending a lot of effort and resources to crack down on foreign espionage here in China. For instance, in 2014, at the end of that year, China published a new anti-espionage law. Do you think there is some kind of linkage between China's efforts in fighting foreign espionage with this case that we, are seen written about?
I would say certainly there are links. As I said, China is basically a latecomer in terms of this collecting information activity, by big powers. You can see, the top ranks should be basically including like the U.S., Russia, Israelis, and Brits and other developed countries usually. In terms of their capability, in terms of the tools they have available at their hand to collect those information, to gather the intelligence. China obviously is lagging behind. I think, especially after the revolution of the Snowden case and other cases like Chelsea Manning, for the Chinese government, if they want to better protect their national security, trade secret, and also sensitive technologies, you have to do something. I think that's part of the response.
Einar, what is your answer to my question? Do you think, have you observed greater effort and also greater effectiveness in China's fight against foreign espionage, especially in this digital age?
Well, all I can say is that technology has its limits, and in fact, what we're really talking is about human beings. And I think China has very old and established things. If you go back to the Three Kingdoms, the classic Chinese literature, they discuss how these things are done. That's not the issue. I think one of the watershed points was when President Obama publicly said we should stop having our spies involved in these inoculation campaigns that are going around the world. That was a quiet but very, very pointed bombshell that showed that the U.S. was using these NGOs to do this. And this is one of the reasons that China has been cracking down on NGOs, foreign NGOs here, because they suspect that they are, in essence, fronts for American spying operations. But having said that, I think the nature of spying as we go forward has changed. It's increasingly becoming more and more about the electronic frontier and what you can learn from that.
Qinduo, what is your final take? How can we protect ourselves in this electronic world? Are you going to cover up your cell phones or laptops like what Mark Zuckerberg does?
I would say yes. If you look at the, especially say like high value asset people like Mark Zuckerberg and also even the former FBI director Comey, he covered the cameras and also the video audio portals on your mobile devices. So for people like us, probably if you want to protect yourself at least, you should probably do so.
We have to be more aware. Anyway, thank you very much, gentlemen. We have to leave it there. That was Einar Tangen and Xu Qinduo, current affairs commentators. And here is my last point. A one-sided story with an eye-catching title with graphic details which nobody can prove right or wrong. This is my impression of the New York Times article. Since when it's okay to spy on others and complain out loud when your cover is blown? Since when are all the mainstream media jump on a bandwagon of a story they themselves cannot verify? It's possible that New York Times has its anonymous sources, but the BBC doesn't. Well, I guess the keywords China, spy, CIA are all eye-catching, and when you put them together, the professionalism becomes irrelevant. That's unfortunate.